The battle report for the Sector 7 engagement was filed at the Joint Operations Forward Base Documentation System at the 23rd hour of the engagement's concluding day by Accord Frontier Infantry Sergeant Davin Mayer, in the standard format that the Accord's military documentation protocol required, with the specific, thorough quality of someone who understood that the report's accuracy was the record's foundation, and that the record's foundation mattered because the record was what remained when the engagement was over, and the engagement's participants were whatever they were after it. Davin was 30 years old. He had been a frontier infantry sergeant for 7 years, and he had the specific, unglamorous quality that 7 years of ground-level infantry work produced in the people who did it honestly. Not the decorated quality, not the commendations quality, not the quality of someone whose name appeared in the strategic summaries or the command-level recognition systems. The quality of someone who had been present in the engagement's actual conditions across 7 years, and who had, in the being present, built the particular character of someone who understood the ground-level reality, with the thorough, honest attention of someone for whom the ground-level reality was the complete context, rather than the context beneath the strategic one. He filed the report. The report was thorough. It described the Sector 7 engagement's conditions in the specific, complete way of someone who had been in them and who was, in the describing, giving the conditions the accurate account they deserved. The strategic context. The Accord-Varath Joint Operations Forward position had been compromised by the Keth Secondary Offensive's unexpected flanking movement, which the Joint Intelligence Picture had not contained, and which had produced. In the Joint Command's response, the redeployment of the Varath Sovereignty's primary defensive unit, the personal guard of Princess Sira Valn, 600 soldiers, the force that had been holding the forward line's eastern anchor. The redeployment had created a gap. The gap's dimensions, the gap's strategic significance, the gap's vulnerability to the Keth offensive's continued pressure, all of it documented with the specific, honest accuracy of someone who had been in the gap and who understood the gap from the inside. The report described the decisions. This was what made the report it was, not the outcomes documentation, not the strategic summaries language of a holding action that had preserved the forward line's integrity during the critical redeployment window, but the specific, particular decisions that the 11 hours had required, and that Davin had made with the 11 soldiers of his squad in the gap's actual conditions. The positioning decisions. How he had arranged the 11 soldiers across the gap's defensive geography with the specific, deliberate quality of someone who was simultaneously managing the gap's coverage requirements and each soldier's exposure to the Keth offensive's pressure. The positioning was not the positioning that a pure gap coverage analysis would have produced. A pure gap coverage positioning would have placed the soldiers at the gap's most strategically significant points, regardless of the exposure, those points created for the individual soldiers. His positioning placed the soldiers at the points that were both strategically significant and the least exposed, and where the pure gap coverage point and the least exposed point were not the same point. His positioning chose the least exposed point and found the alternative coverage arrangement that the least exposed positioning required. The report documented this, not as the explicit statement of a principle, as the honest description of the specific decisions and the specific reasoning and the specific outcomes. The documentation was the honest record. The honest record contained the choosing. The 7th hour. The Keth secondary element's second push had created the specific, compressed situation of a choice between the eastern exposure and the northern exposure. The eastern exposure was the gap's strategic anchor, the position that held the gap for the forward line's integrity. The northern exposure was the position that protected the 3 soldiers in the northern corner from the second push's flanking element. He had chosen the northern exposure. He had compromised the gap's strategic anchor for 4 minutes while he found the alternative position that restored the gap's coverage from the less exposed northern anchor. The 4 minutes were documented. The compromise was documented. The 3 soldiers who were alive at the engagement's conclusion because of the northern exposure choice were documented. The 4 soldiers who were not alive at the engagement's conclusion were documented. All of it. The 7 alive and the 4 gone and the decisions and the 4 minutes and the compromised anchor and the alternative position found was in the honest record of someone who understood that the honest record was the record that mattered. He filed it. He went to sleep. He did not know that the report would be read. Princess Sira Valn read the report at the 7th hour of the day, following the engagement's conclusion. She was 28 years old, the Varath sovereignty's second in line for the throne, the commander of the personal guard whose redeployment had created the gap that the report described. She had been in the Joint Command's briefings during the engagement, and she had the command picture of what Davan's squad had done, the strategic notation of a holding action, the outcomes documentation, the specific institutional language of the command structure's record. The command picture was accurate. The command picture was insufficient. She requested the complete report from the Joint Documentation System, and she received the complete report, and she read the complete report with the specific, comprehensive quality of someone who had decided that the complete document was the thing she needed rather than the institutional summary the complete document produced. She read it for 3 hours. In the 3 hours, she read the positioning decisions and the 7th hour and the 4 minutes and the northern exposure choice and the 3 soldiers and the 4 soldiers and the alternative position found and all of it. The complete record of 11 hours in a gap with 11 soldiers and the 7 alive and the 4 gone, and the honest account of how the 7 alive and the 4 gone were the product of specific, deliberate decisions made by a specific particular person. At the conclusion of the 3 hours, she sat in the command documents reading space with the complete report and the specific quality of someone who has found something in the reading that the reading had not expected to contain. She appeared in the Varath Sovereignty's royal court the following morning. The court was in its standard weekly assembly, the specific, institutional quality of the sovereignty's governance performing its regular function. The council members and the senior military command and the diplomatic representatives and the court's administrative apparatus all present in the chamber's formal arrangement with the particular, ambient quality of the regular institutional function, proceeding with the competence the function required. She stood at the chamber's center. She said, in the Varath formal register with the specific, declarative quality of an institutional statement delivered with the full authority of her position, I have read the complete battle report of Accord Sergeant Davan Mayer. I have determined that Sergeant Mayer possesses the specific quality that the sovereignty's royal household requires in a consort. I am declaring my intention to marry this human. The court's silence lasted approximately 4 seconds. In the 4 seconds, the chamber had the specific quality of somewhere that has received information it did not prepare for, and that is, in the receiving, in the space before the processing produces the response. Then the court erupted. The commanding officer of Davan's forward base unit delivered the information with the specific, uncomfortable quality of someone who had been given information they did not know how to deliver, and who had decided, in the not knowing, that the direct approach was the only available approach. The Varath princess, his commanding officer said, has declared in open court that she intends to marry you. Davan looked at his commanding officer. Sir, he said. Yes, his commanding officer said. The Varath princess, Davan said. Yes, his commanding officer said. Has declared, Davan said. In open court, his commanding officer said. Yes. That she intends, Davan said. To marry you, his commanding officer said. Yes, you specifically by name in open court. Yesterday, Davan was quiet for a moment with the specific quality of someone processing information that their 7 years of operational experience had not prepared them for. My battle report, he said. Apparently, his commanding officer said. He was given the transport and the 48 hours and the specific, careful quality of a command structure managing something it had no institutional framework for managing by sending it in the direction it needed to go and stepping back. He arrived at the Varath Sovereignty's central court with the quality of someone who had been in enough difficult situations to have developed the capacity for being present in them without performing the composure. But who was? In this particular difficult situation, in the specific additional quality of someone whose 7 years had not included anything that resembled this and who was, in the resemblance's absence, navigating with the quality that was available rather than the quality the situation might have preferred. The court had the specific, layered quality of a centuries-old institution that understood its own importance, the formal architecture and the institutional protocols, and the ambient character of somewhere that had been the sovereignty's governance center for centuries, and that had, in the centuries, built the particular quality of somewhere that communicated its significance to everyone who entered it. He read it with the infantry quality, the ground-level assessment of an environment, The specific, trained attention of someone who understood that the accurate reading of the environment was the function's foundation. He was conducted to the formal reception chamber. She was there. He assessed her with the quality that 7 years had built, the thorough, rapid reading of the person that the operational environment required, and that he had, in the 7 years, developed with the honesty that the ground-level work demanded. She was Varath, the pointed ears, sharp and precise, the dark hair and the formal arrangement, the specific quality of someone whose presence communicated something before the communication was deliberate. She had the commander's quality, the particular, grounded quality of someone whose authority was in the fact of the 4 years rather than the performance of them. She looked at him. The look was the assessment quality, the thorough, rapid reading of the person in front of her with the same comprehensive attention she had given the battle report. "You read my battle report," he said. "Yes," she said. "The complete report," he said. "Yes," she said, "for 3 hours." He looked at her, and the declaration, he said. "Yes," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "Why," he said, "the complete answer." She looked at him with the full quality of someone who had prepared the complete answer and who was, in the looking, giving it. "The report describes the positioning," she said. "The specific, deliberate quality of how you arranged 11 soldiers across a gap. The positioning was not the pure gap coverage positioning. A pure gap coverage positioning would have placed the soldiers at the gaps, most strategically significant points, regardless of what those points did to the individual soldiers. Your positioning placed the soldiers at the points that were both strategically significant and the least exposed. Where the two requirements were not compatible, your positioning chose the soldiers and found the coverage arrangement that the choosing required." He looked at her. "The tactical positioning," he said. "The tactical positioning was for the soldiers," she said. "Not instead of the gap for the soldiers first, and then the gap from the positions the soldiers required. The gap held because you found the positions that held both. But the report shows the choosing, the soldiers as the primary variable, the gap as the constraint." He was quiet. "The 7th hour," she said, "the Keth second push. The eastern exposure and the northern exposure, and the 4 minutes. You compromised the gap strategic anchor for 4 minutes to protect 3 soldiers from the flanking element's second push." "The gap still held," he said. "Yes," she said, "because you found the alternative position in 4 minutes. But the report shows the 4 minutes, the gap compromised for 3 soldiers while the alternative was found. The 4 soldiers gone are also in the report. The 7 soldiers alive are in the report." She looked at him, the honest accounting of all of it, the choosing and the cost and the outcome. He looked at her. "That is what produced the declaration," he said. 4 years of command," she said. "The personal guard, 600 soldiers. The command's function requires the quality of someone who understands that the soldiers are the objective, and the mission is the work, and the two are not always compatible, and that the command's quality is the quality of finding the ways they are compatible." She paused. "I have been building that quality in the command for 4 years. The report describes someone who has it without the building as the person's natural expression rather than the command's product." He looked at her. "The declaration in open court," he said. "Yes," she said. "Based on a battle report," he said. "Based on what the battle report shows about the person who filed it," she said. "The report is the honest record. The honest record is the person. I read the person." He was quiet for a long moment. "I filed a standard report," he said. "The standard quality, the accurate description of what happened." "Yes," she said. "The standard quality that many people perform and few people actually have. The accuracy that many reports claim and few reports contain." She looked at him. "I have read many battle reports. The complete documents, not the summaries. The complete document of someone who spent 11 hours choosing the soldiers and finding the positions and accounting honestly for the 7 alive and the 4 gone. That report I have not read before." He looked at the reception chamber and the court's institutional architecture and the specific, complex quality of where he was. "The council's institutional window," he said. "The senior representative communicated it to me in the antechamber." "Yes," she said. "The 30-day window, the acceptance or the decline." "The decline's grounds require the council's assessment," he said. "Yes," she said. "That is," he said, "a significant institutional arrangement." "Yes," she said. "The declaration created it. The declaration was mine. The institutional arrangement it created is," she paused, "not symmetrically mine." He looked at her steadily. The factions, he said, in the 48 hours since the declaration. Yes, she said. 3 primary factions. The protocol faction, the species objection faction, the strategic vulnerability faction. I know, he said. The Accord's diplomatic intelligence picture is active in the court. She looked at him. You have been reading the court, she said. Since the transport's arrival, he said. The ground-level quality. The operational environment's reading. She looked at him for a moment. What have you read? She said. 3 factions with 3 distinct motivations, he said. The protocol faction is protecting the institutional framework because the institutional framework is the protocol faction's source of authority. The species objection faction is protecting the sovereignty's identity, the specific, accumulated quality of a civilization's understanding of itself. The strategic vulnerability faction, he paused. The strategic vulnerability faction has the most sophisticated argument and the most varied membership. Yes, she said. Some of the strategic vulnerability faction's membership is arguing in bad faith, he said. The opposed interests argument used as the political vehicle for the institutional isolation, the bad faith component has always preferred. But some of the membership is arguing from the genuine concern. She looked at him. The genuine concern, she said. The perception, he said. Not the actual vulnerability. The aligned interests eliminate the actual vulnerability. The Accord and the sovereignty's interests are aligned by the framework. There is no lever. But the adversary's perception of the human consort's connection as a future lever is the genuine concern's content. The perception's operational effect is the same as the actual lever's effect if the adversaries act on the perception. She was quiet for a moment. You have read the strategic vulnerability faction's genuine concern more carefully, she said, than the faction has articulated it. The ground-level reading, he said, 7 years. The genuine concern has a different quality than the bad faith argument. The genuine concern's quality is the quality of people who are worried about the right thing and are articulating it as the wrong thing because the right thing's articulation is more difficult. She looked at him for a long time. The 30-day window, she said, 17 days remaining. Yes, he said. He looked at her. The genuine concern requires the genuine answer, he said. Not the aligned interests argument. That addresses the bad faith component. The genuine concern requires the demonstration that the aligned interests are genuine rather than temporary. The adversary's perception of the human consort as a future lever depends on their assessment of the alliance framework's longevity. If the alliance framework's longevity is uncertain in the adversary's assessment, the human consort is a future lever in their planning regardless of the aligned interest's current reality. She looked at him. You are saying, she said, that the genuine concern requires the demonstration rather than the argument. Yes, he said. The aligned interests demonstrated through the human consort's operational commitment to the sovereignty's interests. The visible, demonstrable, documented commitment that builds the honest record of the alignment rather than the assertion of it. She looked at him for a long moment. The honest record, she said. Yes, he said. The battle report was the honest record of the gap held. The aligned interests demonstration is the honest record of something else held, the sovereignty's interests, held with the same quality as the gap. You are proposing to accept, she said. I am proposing to address the genuine concern first, he said. The acceptance follows from the genuine concern's honest answer. She looked at him. The 17 days, she said. The positioning takes the time it takes, he said. The 7th hour required 4 minutes for the alternative position. The genuine concern requires the honest record's construction. The honest record is built from the honest work. The honest work takes the time it requires. She looked at him for a long time with the full quality. The commander's quality and the assessment quality, and the underneath quality of someone who had read a battle report for 3 hours, and who was, in the looking, reading the person who had filed it. You are applying the ground-level quality, she said, to the political problem. The political problem has the same structure as the tactical problem, he said. The gap needs to be held, and the soldiers need to be protected, and the two requirements are not always compatible, and the function is finding the positions where they are compatible. She looked at him. The gap, she said, the different gap. The political factions and the institutional framework and the strategic vulnerability and the adversary's perception and the 30-day window, he said. The different gap. The function is the holding. She was quiet. He looked at her. Sira, he said. Her name in the Accord's personal register, not the princess's formal designation, not the royal household's institutional address, not the declaration's subject's address to the declaration's maker. The name in the register of the person rather than the position, the name of someone being spoken to directly rather than institutionally. She looked at him. "The battle report," he said. "You read it for 3 hours." "Yes," she said. "The 7 alive and the 4 gone," he said. "Yes," she said. "The honest accounting," he said. "Yes," she said. "I will file the honest record of this too," he said. "The 17 days and the positioning and the genuine concerns, honest answer and the acceptance. Whatever the honest record contains, it will be accurate." She looked at him with the full, complete, genuine quality of someone who had read the honest record, and who was, in the looking, present in the person the honest record described. "Davan," she said. His name in the Varath personal register, not the sergeant's rank, not the Accord's frontier infantry, not the declaration's subject. The name in the register of the person found in the honest record, the name said to the person directly. He looked at her. "The positioning," she said. "The 7th hour, the 4 minutes and the alternative found." "Yes," he said. "You refuse to treat the gap and the soldiers as incompatible," she said. "Yes," he said. "The different gap," she said. "Yes," he said. "The function is the same, the gap and the soldiers, the holding and the protecting, the positioning that does both." She looked at him. 17 days, she said. 17 days, he said. Outside the reception chamber, the Varath Sovereignty's royal court continued its institutional operations with the 3 factions and their objections, and the 30-day window, and the council's protocols, and the military command's assessment, and the diplomatic framework's review. All of it doing what the institutional framework required with the patient, procedural quality of centuries of institutional practice. Inside the reception chamber, the frontier infantry sergeant who had held a gap for 11 hours with 11 soldiers, and the princess who had read the honest record for 3 hours, and made the declaration were in the specific, genuine space of 2 people who had, in the report and the reading, and the 3 hours and the 48 hours, and the transport, and the ground-level reading of the court's operational environment, and the genuine concern, and the honest answer, and the 17 days. Arrived at the significant thing. The 7 soldiers alive, the 4 soldiers gone, the honest record real, the gap held, the different gap named, the positioning to be found together. Which was, as the 7 years and the 4 years and the 11 hours, and the battle report filed with the standard quality of someone who understood that the honest record was the record that mattered, and the 3 hours of reading that had found the person in the honest record, and the declaration in open court that had named what the finding required. Exactly where the honest record led, when it was filed with the complete quality it deserved. The function done, the honest record real, the gap held together.